Hello and welcome to the 42 Rugby Weekly. Murray Kinsella here, filling in for Gav Casey. He is over in Liverpool for Katie Taylor's big fight. Best of luck over there, Gav. Joining me as always is Byrne Jackman. How are you, Birch?
Good, thank you. Good.
And we're also joined by UL Bows head coach Niamh Briggs. How are you, Niamh?
Hi guys, how are you?
Yeah, flying here. Really excited for a big European weekend. It's really rolled around nice and quickly. And listen, there's only one place to start. It's going to be Munster Wasps Sunday, 3:15 p.m. in Coventry. We've heard John Mitchell, the assistant coach in Wasps, saying they are not the favourites for this game. Some people are telling me that this would be a miracle match outcome for Munster, and others actually have Munster down for a definite win. Birch, what's your sense of it right now?
Look, I think they'll probably win. I think they have enough quality there. Europe is special for Munster. The pressure's on Wasps, regardless of what Mitchell says. And I actually haven't looked at what the bookies are doing, but I just think Munster will get the job done. I watched Wasps against Worcester last weekend. I think they're not in a great place at the moment. Obviously, a lot of injuries themselves, and yeah, I think Munster go over there, and the youngsters who get a chance to be involved will pitch up, and maybe play at a level above what they've ever done before because of the emotion, because of the opportunity. And I'd be really disappointed if we don't see a big Munster performance.
It's funny how it's kind of rebounded to this, Niamh. At the start, it was, will they be able to actually fulfil this fixture? Then you're thinking they'll send over the Espoirs and might take a bit of a hammering. But now there's a bit of belief there. You've actually been in Munster quite recently as part of their coach development. What was your sense of what was going on in camp?
Yeah, I was in there last Monday week because he invited us all in prior to knowing this, to be fair. And then stuck to his word. It would have been very easy for him to close up shop and not have us in. There was about 15 coaches, I think, on the sidelines observing. And a couple of things. What blew me away was the no sense of panic or anxiety. There wasn't. It was all very calm. And those senior internationals, particularly Peter O'Mahony, blew me away in terms of their leadership. I don't think he made a mistake in the whole session. Technically so good, and we kind of forget that because we see them from a supporter's point of view or a punditry point of view, where you're talking about the team as a whole, but how they dealt and what Cozzy had passed on to them. So he called them in that morning apparently and sat them down and said, okay, look, there's 8 internationals here. I think it was 8 or 9, and you're effectively going to be 8 or 9 coaches for the next 2 weeks. And you could see it. At one stage, Joey Carberry pulls everybody in and he speaks to them about their attack. Damon Delende pulls everybody in with Conway and they speak about their hammer defence. And they just all took on a leadership role, and you could see the academy boys at the very start were like, it was a million miles an hour at the start of the session. Balls dropped and players running into each other. But there was just, a huge sense of calm from those coaches and from that leadership group. And the session was really, really good. And you could see them feeding information to them all the time. And yeah, I thought I was actually really impressed, to be honest, coming away out of it.
Sounds really fascinating just to get an eyesight of it up close. And even talking to Johan van Graan and Ian Costello on the press conference yesterday, you get a sense of how different it is, because Johan is in a hotel in Limerick doing his self-isolation, and Ian Costello is there running the show in the HPC. Birch, like there are 9 international players, as Niamh mentioned there, still available. There's a couple of guys who just got back from injury, including Roman Salanoa at tight head, and now they're talking about a couple of guys coming out of that self-isolation to actually play this weekend. So they're going to end up here with a pretty strong team, Bernard. Yeah,
they will, and the guys coming out of self-isolation or isolation will be tried and tested pro rugby players. So a lot of the talk about the youngsters, there might only be very few of them actually needed. So they'll be surrounded by experienced players, even more than obviously they've had for the last 2 weeks of training. But there's obviously some rumours of COVID in the group that came back, so we're not 100% sure who's affected by that. But yeah, I just think in the very strong back line available, it's just that front 5. I think they'll be trying to fill some spots on the bench from some of the lads who went to South Africa originally, because I think that's just the area that there's most need.
Like, you've got a great spine there in terms of Kilcoyne and Byrne, and your captain O'Mahony and the two halfbacks in Murray and Carberry, the full backline really, maybe one academy player in there. If I had to ask you, Bernard, about, that those handful of young guys are going to be involved, is there one young player that you would particularly be excited to see involved for Munster this weekend?
I'd like to see Kinsella. I'm not sure if he's available, but from my understanding of the guys who were left behind, it's only Pete in the back row who didn't travel, who's like the tried and tested. Look, we've seen some likes of Hodnett obviously, but Kinsella for me over the course of the Six Nations of the summer, really impressed me. And if he's the youngster that comes to mind that we obviously seen from Munster, but not I haven't seen him play 10 or 12 games for Munster. So, and he's a guy who looked like he had the maturity to step up in an environment like that. So without knowing is he available or not, he's probably the player I'd love to see play in European Cup.
What about you, Niamh, from those maybe in the academy players and youngsters who've been left behind and trained away in Limerick?
Yeah, I think Owen O'Connor is a big one in second row. I think he's coming back from an injury. He looked really impressive at training the other day. He's as big as Tom Ahern almost, I think, in terms of height, and really good prospect at underage. Just think he's had such a bad injury. He had a really bad knee injury that literally kept him out for 2 seasons. So I think he's nearly there. And Tony Butler is this 10 that's really burst onto the scene over the last probably 12, 15 months, even though there's been very little rugby. He's from Ennis, product of Ennis, and I watched him play against Connacht Day a couple of weeks ago. I watched him over the summer playing against Leinster, and he's really, really good. I think he's going to be involved with the Irish under-20s. He's another good product, another good 10 that Munster are starting to turn out.
They have a few of them. You mentioned Ian Costello earlier on, and he's obviously kind of running the show really on the ground in Limerick. And you've worked with him and you know him particularly well from Bowes. What can you tell us about him as a coach? Like, what would you say his big things have been, and what kind of imprint will you have been leaving on players this week?
Yeah, so Cossy's class, I think, in terms of how his ability to communicate with players, I think that was one big thing that stuck out the other day. I think he's obviously been around those older Munster boys before, because he was involved as a skills and technical coach before he moved into backs, and then he went away to Nottingham and Wasps. I think the big thing for him, and observing him over the last couple of weeks, is how much he's grown as a coach. I think his defensive structure and his philosophies are so good. His attention to detail is like something I've never seen before. It kind of reminds me of that Joe Schmidt era. He can pick things out really on the fly. And I just love the fact that he empowers players around him to make good decisions, to become good leaders. And yeah, I think that his time in England really attributed to his ability to, when you both know this, but when you start to come into coaching, you want all the control because you feel like everything you need to know and you need to be able to give all your information out. I think that his time in England has shown him that he doesn't have to have all that control, that he just has to concentrate on one or two things and empower other coaches and players around him to deliver his message, I suppose. And he does that. He was buzzing lads last Monday. It was just like he was like a child at Christmas running around. Yeah, look, I think he's really grown into this role. I do think he was 100% the right man for that job in terms of that academy. I've seen it firsthand over the summer. But I do think that his knowledge of Wasps and his ability to coach that level definitely meant that he was the right person to fill in for this couple of weeks. Yeah,
one of the many coaches who I think gave up trying to coach me how to tackle people, so God bless him back in the day. Birch, it's great for coach development, it's great for the player development. Guys who never would have had a sniff of a senior training session have been in. Some under 19 players registered to European squad, and there's a real sense of excitement around Munster, even from the other provinces. I'm sensing it. It obviously is not so far from an ideal situation what's happened, and obviously we want everyone to get healthy, but if they can pull this off this weekend, long term there could actually be a bit of a benefit, I'm thinking, from this for Munster.
Look at absolutely, I think it could. You'll end up having had people talking to people they never talked to before, guys getting a taste of it. Certain people, who maybe were earmarked as being, potential Munster players may disappoint, and others who maybe they weren't sure about will step up into the challenge. And it kind of, look at it, it's in a different way. It reminds me a little bit about Connacht getting stuck in Russia. and how that gelled them, and everyone making their own way through different parts of Europe back, and became a little bit of a journey, but something that they still speak about as being key that season. And there's an opportunity for Munster here to, despite all the distractions, and this is where, look at, to be honest, I think when I'm saying I think Munster win, I'm thinking back to my generation, who you would have thought, or I certainly would have thought, would have thrived in this type of environment, backs to the wall. And in fairness, when I think about it, this generation hasn't proven that yet. In actual fact, I'd probably question why they haven't found, why there hasn't been a revolt, or why they've taken not winning so easily, or haven't found a way to win. But this may be the opportunity in horrible circumstances that gets that spike in emotion, which has always led to Munster being at their best.
Well, we got a scrum-related question on this game from Ger Murphy on Twitter. Bert, you might be well placed to answer this.
That's for me, is it, Mur? No.
I know you're still learning about that side of the game, just like me, Niamh. He said, does Roman Poit being the ref for this match on Sunday, people may have forgotten that, bring even more tension? He says he's half joking, but in a serious context, does this now suit, or which team does this now suit at the scrum? He says, if in doubt, full forward. What do you reckon, Birch?
Well, no, absolutely. I actually really like Roman Poit as a referee, and I know he drives certain people mad, but I like him because he's a personality and a character, and even when he gets things wrong, he admits it afterwards, and he's a likeable guy off the field, which I think has helped him in France. And he's had an incredibly long career. Look, at the reality with Roman is he's not that worried about technical laws around the scrummage, around scrum. It's about dominance, and that's the one area that Wasps will feel, given that Munster obviously have a more stacked backline, that they potentially can get an edge there. And they look back at Munster against Ospreys even. When Munster had, a strong front pack where they were found wanting a little bit at scrum time. So I would say that's the major worry for Munster, in that if Roman gets an idea in his head early around who's dominant, it may be very difficult to change that. So, yeah, as I said, I don't know what front row, what pack Munster are putting out, but I would say that'd be the main area of concern for me, is that they, it sounds fucking paint a good picture, but basically show Roman that they're at least equal to Wasps in this area.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating part of it. John Mitchell mentioned as well that they're keen to stress Munster's fitness, take them deep into the game, see how they come out of this tough period, obviously not having played a lot together, but they have their own travails, I suppose, Niamh, at the moment. 5 defeats in a row. As Birch mentioned, the form isn't good. Big name players injured at the moment. Joe Launchbury, captain. Dan Robson, your scrum half. Malachi Fekitoa got injured. That resulted in Alex McHenry going over there on loan. You have Jack Willis still coming back, and a couple of others. So, are they any good? Do you expect them to be a major European challenge, or are they in a tough place at the moment?
No, I agree with Birch said earlier on. I think they're in a really tough place. I think that they're still getting players back though. So Jimmy Goppert played last weekend for the first time in a while. Cruz came back last weekend, and I think was due to be back last weekend, and they decided they'd wait till this weekend. So they definitely have enough players to be able to go and do the job. And I think that, it's such a typical head coach trying to take pressure off your own players by saying how it's very soccer, isn't it? How can we be favourites? But they're in a really difficult place. And I think, and I know they got to finals and stuff the last couple of years, but for me, I still think they're trying to search for their identity. They've had a huge amount of moves over the last 10 years. That old school Delalio, Josh Lucy, Joe Worsley, that group, a bit kind of like Munster in that sense that, the evolution of the club and what's happened to it since hasn't really lived on that past glory. And I think that's why this is so interesting, because Munster are still trying to compare themselves, or not Munster, but Munster supporters and people want to expect Munster to be challenging for European Cups and challenging for trophies, and it hasn't been the case. And I think we think all the time about, why aren't they, and they should be. And but winning trophies is a really difficult thing, and winning European trophies is an even harder thing to do. And but I think for this Wasp squad, I still think that they should have enough in what they're doing to be able to put it up. But I watched that game last weekend against Worcester, and while they can do things quite well with ball in hand. Their defence was incredibly porous. They didn't look like they had much cohesion. And if it's going to be any team that Munster could go and get an away victory, it will be Wasps, I think.
It's going to be an absolute classic. Before we move on from Munster, we got a question from Niall Lennon on Instagram on a different topic. I would love to hear both your thoughts on this, really. He says, could you discuss the whole Jack Crowley scenario again? Do you think if he had his time back that he might go abroad if he got the chance? What do you reckon, Birch?
Yeah, I think I think he probably would. It hasn't really fallen for him the way he would have expected, and that's not down to anyone's fault. Munster, it's just the way he had a couple of niggles early doors. In fairness, Ben Healy has taken his opportunity and warrants the game time he's getting, and then obviously they're trying to get Joey up to speed. So he's been getting lots of minutes. So it definitely he hasn't got as much game time as he wants. I'm not actually sure if he was free to go to La Rochelle or was he still under an academy contract at the time as well. So it mightn't have been as blatantly clear as maybe it looked. I know Rog certainly inquired about him, but I'm not sure if he was contracted. And obviously Munster wouldn't have wanted to let it go. But look, it's only December. Things change very quickly, and I certainly believe, as a lot of people do, based on what we've seen of him at underage and at club level and glimpses, is that he has the talent, and if you have the talent, you just need an opportunity. So it is something. I know one of the questions came in around the new format. Does that help or hinder young players like Crowley? It definitely doesn't help them in terms of obvious opportunities when internationals are away to play in the URC, but we've been crying out for a better product and have our star players playing more. So you can't have it every day, and it's up now to the powers that be to find opportunities, and whether that's AIL, which I would like it to be, or whether it's A games or something else. But we need to see him playing on a regular basis so that when he gets the opportunity for Munster, he is match ready as well.
That was Jamie McGilloway, by the way, from the members WhatsApp group, members.the42.ie, if you want to join in there. He said he'd love to hear about the impact of the new league format and lack of games for players and the importance of the AL. And Niamh, Crowley has been playing there, even at fullback with Con, but he's a massive talent, isn't he? Yeah,
he is. I just want to say, Birch took the words out of my mouth. I think the new format probably hasn't helped him. The fact that probably Joy Carberry was struggling for form and consistency at the very start of the season meant that you needed to try and give him as much game time. But also, I watched him a couple of weeks ago during that window where there was no games in the autumn series, and he was playing against Connacht A, and he played at 12. And I thought he was probably one of the best people on the park. That day, that back row was Jack Daly at 7, Kendellen at 6, and Jack O'Sullivan. And like Papali, like Connacht were fairly stacked as well, to be fair. And for me, that back row and Jack Crowley were incredibly good that day. And that could be an option too for them. I think Munster are crying out for a ball playing 12. I think centre is definitely something that they probably don't have a huge amount of strength and depth in. And if it's a case that you put him into 12 to shift that playmaking duty one away, which is really probably where the game is going now, could be an opportunity for him. But I do think he's an exceptional talent, and it's just unfortunate for game time. And we see it not just with Munster, we see it with Leinster as well, with Byrne's brothers, we see it in other places too. But I just think when he's that good, you've got to try and find a way to get him in there.
Yeah, loads of excitement for the future, and indeed the very immediate future at Munster. It's going to be a great weekend. Leinster are the first of the province up in action on Saturday, 3:15 against Bath at the Aviva. Bath, 9 defeats out of 9 in the Premiership. They've got injury problems themselves. Stuart Hooper seems to be under massive pressure, Birch. This looks like being a one-way traffic for Leinster. Yeah,
they will, and I think he won't feel he's going to get a huge amount out of this weekend to help him. I think it's a foregone conclusion that Leinster win unless they totally underperform, and I don't think they will. I think the Ulster game has given them just that little knee-jerk reaction. They've got a knee-jerk reaction from that that'll last for the next 6 or 7 weeks at least, and Yeah, Stuart Hooper. They're looking for a defence coach, and he's desperately trying to get one to come in and help them, shore up their defence, and that may help him save his job. And yeah, they'll just be hoping to get out of Dublin with some positives. And it's actually terrible, because when you look at their players individually, they actually are putting out really good teams, and they're having some really good individual performances, but collectively. But that's been breaking down. I mean, the word on the street in rugby circles for the last 2 years is that Bath wasn't a happy place, and there was a lot of things happening in terms of the management that players didn't really agree with, and it's manifested itself now in obviously nine losses in a row. But it's and coming to Dublin on the back of 9 losses in a row isn't a nice fixture to have.
It's not ideal. What of Leinster, Niamh? What have you made of how they've been tracking this season so far?
Yeah, look, I think it's kind of hard to... It's kind of almost in 2 parts for me. So you have that Irish contingent that are playing so well and full of confidence, and then you have the next group down that I don't think have the same cohesion that we're used to. I think at times they've lacked that kind of ability to be able to get to the edges with true hands no matter what the number is on your back. I think that we've been so used to looking at, forwards down to, backs and having that interchange happen really seamlessly. I just don't think we've seen that as well this year. I think this might sound a little bit controversial, but Leinster without Johnny Sexton are a total different team than with them. He seems to drive that around, and he, more than anyone, is so important to how they play. And yeah, look, I think they have loads of players individually that are really, really on top form, and they've just got to get that, that flow, that continuity back together again by playing more matches. I thought they were poor at the start against Connacht this weekend, but then I also thought that Connacht held the ball very well, but they managed to come out of it, and they were so good in that second half. Their ability to feed off people's mistakes and to punish them at the highest level is one of the best. And look, I think I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on whether Harry Byrne has nailed down that second 10 spot. My jury's still out in it, I think. But I'd love to see them just kick on from that last weekend. I think that Bath won't offer that opposition to do it.
That seems like a pity. And actually the Byrne thing is one of the other questions we got from Leinster Rugby Gifts. They asked about some of the big selection calls this weekend. Frawley or Henshaw at 12, Adam Byrne or Larmour on the right wing, I presume, and Ross Byrne or Harry Byrne. Birch, what do you think? Which way would you actually like to see Leinster go with that 10 selection?
I'll go Ross. I'll go Ross, to be honest. And for the here and now, and I think whatever 10 plays, they'd win. But if you're going to go with Ross next week, which if Johnny's still out, I think you probably have to. That's the call there, and I think Frawley might start at 12 this week, and just give him another opportunity to impress. And I don't think you're losing anything with him. I thought against Ulster. He had lots of bright moments, even though the team were poor. And yeah, I'd go with him this week, and give him a shot. Give him a shot in what'll probably be, he'll be on the front foot. I know Harry will be on the front foot as well, but I'd go with Ross and Frawley at 10-12.
Yeah, like everyone's talking about Harry Byrne at the moment, and always do. He's a player who attracts a lot of, discussion and debate, Birch. We actually got a question about Ross Byrne specifically from Neil Murphy, who says, should Ross Byrne move to Ulster? Which, of course, he had a chance to do a number of years ago. He's out of contract at the end of this season. He's got interest from France, as we know. And there's so many clubs who love a 10 as reliable and consistent and composed as him. Like, what's your sense of where his career is now with Harry emerging? Ireland clearly backing Harry Byrne to be one of their 10s in the future, but he always does a job for Leinster. Yeah,
I think he does. And Leinster have managed to keep the vast majority of those players who aren't necessarily first choice happy, which is testament to how good the environment is there. Testament to how nice Dublin 4 is to live in, where most of them live, and how they enjoy Dublin life. And then they believe that if they stay with Leinster, they're going to be in the shop window for Ireland, and they're going to be winning trophies, which is, it's very hard to find clubs, bar Toulouse and maybe Exeter or Saracens, that's something that you could say year on year is going to be the case. So I think he could stay. I think he could stay because of Johnny's age profile and enjoyed battling with his brother. Because I think Leinster will, even though Farrell might pick Harry over Ross at the moment. I think some of that's down to just trying to find out what the actual succession plan is for Sexton. Whereas I think Leo and Stewart, when it comes to Europe or crunch games in the URC, they'll pick the best 15 for here and now. So I reckon if Ross doesn't leave Leinster, he'll still end up playing a hell of a lot of rugby over the next 3, 4, 5 years, and good rugby as well.
Where are you on it, Niamh? You've kind of started this debate. Where do you see the second choice 10 being?
Yeah, I'm very similar to Birch. I think for club, you're looking at here and now, and I agree. I think Ross is further in his development. I think I really liked Harry playing under 20s in Ireland, but stepping up to senior level is another different kettle of fish. And I still haven't seen enough of him to be, to be able to turn around and give a good argument for or against him. I still think that he's a huge amount of work to do. And yeah, look, I just think that I don't think Ross ever really played that poorly. And I think that what you're looking for is for somebody to have that kind of maturity in the direction of what they're looking to do. But yeah, look, at the moment, I definitely think it should be Ross for here and now. But I'm super excited that Birch said Frawley because I am such a huge fan of his. I think he's brilliant. And look, it's very difficult because you're sitting behind. Look, Robbie Henshaw's probably had the best season of his life last season, and Gary Ringrose is coming back into form. But I think to have him in and around that mix, I think is really good. I'd actually like to see him, how he gets on at 10 too, I think, and see if that experiment work. I don't know, I've never seen him, Birch probably know more. But I just think he's a classy operator. He's a really good pass off left or right. He's got a really good burst of speed. His defence is unbelievable. So yeah, I hope we get to see more of him.
Yeah, class act, and he's still Australian qualified, so Ireland need to get him capped pretty soon. He's a fine player, and it will be exciting to see him get his chance there, and it'll be much deserved. It's always a challenge for Leinster, I suppose, other clubs and provinces looking at their players, but there's a bit of chat about them recruiting at the moment. Birch, David Quigley in the members WhatsApp group says there's a bit of a talk about Leinster looking to recruit an overseas second row, which I think we've mentioned a couple of times here maybe. He says, like, who might they be looking to bring in and why now?
I actually haven't heard of any top-end locks on the market. RG Sliman's off contract, but I don't think they'll be allowed go there. The market for locks is ridiculous. If I get 10 phone calls about players, 7 of them are about locks, to be honest. And in my different WhatsApp groups, that's the position that everybody is looking to recruit next year. So yeah, but the only good thing about Leinster is, one of the good things about Leinster is that they, if there's 5 clubs looking for a certain player, he will take Leinster's offer very seriously, and that's a big help. So they can get the top guys. I think it's right to be looking for one. I think they're missing that, and I think the Ulster game, in some way, maybe reinforce that. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know I haven't heard of anybody interesting on the market. But like the beauty of Leinster is they have Guy Easterby, whose full-time job is recruitment and retention. So effectively, Leo do what he does, Stuart does what he does, Mick Dawson, manages the business, and Guy Easterby has 40, 50 hours a week to look for that one player that can make the difference. So I've no doubt that they will go through it in a very intensive process. And if it is true, and they'll find a guy that can make the difference, and they'll be able to get him as well. So but yeah, at the moment they don't have any names, to be honest.
So 2 follow-up questions there. One, why do you think Leinster could use a signing there? Like, what are you seeing that they're missing?
Well, it's not just them. It's the way the game has gone. That big destructive ball carrying maul, the foundation of your maul, attack wise, the destructor of your maul. From a defensive point of view, tight head scrummage and lock. They're just so valuable at the moment. They can really make a difference to a pack. And look, Leinster are very lucky. They have obviously a very strong front row, a very strong back row, and they have lots of locks. I'm just not sure if they have that profile, a Paul Willems, a Will Skelton, an Estebet. The Boks have 6 or 7 of them. They don't have that profile. A Joe Corey even, a little bit younger. I think despite the modern game, despite the improvement in technique, fitness, etc., those big lumps, to use a raw term, they still do really well. I had a guy in Grenoble, Heinrich Root, and he hadn't got a great pedigree. We got him as a medical joker, and he ended up having a brilliant career in France, both for Grenoble and Lyon. And there's clubs, he's retired a year and a half, and there's clubs ringing me up now from France, seeing could they get him back, and would he be able to get back? So look at that's the big, solid, strong, powerful, aggressive lock. And even if they're not line-out options, not the end of the world. They actually have a bigger role than ever. A Mick Galway type, now.
Yeah, well, you answered my second question there. That's the way the game is going. So all hail the big lumps. We need more of them. And if you've got a CV, send it to Birch. He'll hook you up with a good club. Last word on Leinster, Niamh. Another question from DF on Instagram. He mentioned the Ulster match, which we referred to earlier on. He said Ulster, they didn't really go wide in attack. They played quite narrow. Do you see other teams copying this? And is it something you need weeks to work on? Obviously, as we said, Bath is probably not the best tactical challenge, but Ulster set a bit of a template there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of continued on from that La Rochelle defeat last year in Europe. They did the exact same. And I do think though that when you have your best Leinster team, that best front row, your best second row, it comes a different kettle of fish because their defence is really, really good. I just think that on that day, Ulster just got a Leinster team that weren't physically up to it, mentally maybe, in terms of that top 2 inches that everybody talks about. But I do think that, Leinster have tried to fix that problem about the physicality from last year's European by moving the likes of Porter to Loosehead and having that kind of dual threat in terms of physicality on the pitch from Furlong and Porter. I just think that Birch hit the nail on the head there earlier on in terms of that second row. I do think that they struggle. They will struggle in that physicality stakes for all the good work that John Ryan does in around set piece in the line. I don't think he has that physicality of that big, huge, dominant second row. Then that's just my opinion. I think that that's something that he struggles with. But yeah, look, I think I'm not sure that's a huge worry for Leinster when they have everybody playing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. You start to your European campaign. We expect a big win and tougher tests lie ahead as always. Straight after them on Saturday, it's Ulster away to Clermont in Stade Marcel Michelin. Always a raucous atmosphere there. It's going to be 5:30 p.m. Irish time kickoff. And we had a question from John Malloy in the members group, Birch. He said, can we expect any upsets this weekend? Maybe Ulster, or he says Montpellier away. Clermont aren't the team they used to be, he said. What do you make of that? They've kind of slipped away, have they, a little bit? John O'Gibbs there obviously now in charge of them. Yeah,
look, I think John will do a good job in Clermont, but I think there's a bit of a clean-up operation happening. Lopez has signed for Bayonne, I think. Para is leaving at the end of the year. Jono, the beauty of Jono is he knows these fellas, so it's not like a normal new coach going in and you give everybody 6 months, a year to show you what you can do. He had them before, and he's now starting to make decisions around how he wants the squad to be rebuilt, and plus the fact that he's been in France for such a long time now. He knows the GIF market, so he knows who he can replace Lopez with, who he can replace Para with, and there's a lot of really good young French players who would jump at a chance to go to Clermont. So their form has been a little bit up and down. I was shocked when I saw the bookies were only given a -6, and a normal Clermont at home to Ulster, given Ulster's tetchy enough form at the moment, it's -15 or -16. But I can looking down and looking through the results, thinking back to some of the Clermont games I watched this year, they just look a little bit off. But having said that, Europe, an Irish team coming there, it might be the occasion that just they start to flick a switch and turn it on, because individually they've got some, unbelievable power. Obviously Munster won there last year, but the stadium was empty. When the stadium is full, it's an unbelievable amphitheatre to play in. So, I actually think Claremont could go and do a big job in Ulster, even though, as I said, on form, it's not there. But Claremont love Europe. John loves Europe. It's a different avenue for the players, and I think it could be a tough night for Ulster.
There's some real class in the back line. Moala, Raka, Matsushima at fullback, some star names there. Even up front, the power of the likes of Fa Mahina and Lee and Itoria. They've got some really quality players. Ulster, meanwhile, have an injury list that continues to grow. Ian Henderson, Brad Robertson, Marty Moore and Tom Stewart were set back last weekend. Stockdale, Marshall, Addison, Izuchukwu and Jordy Murphy all missing. Dwayne Vermeulen back in training, Niamh, but we're not quite sure yet. He had COVID last week, obviously. Would you be worried for Ulster here?
Yeah, 100%. I do fear for them. I think they've been incredibly inconsistent this year. I think that's probably been the big thing. Away from home as well. You just listed out some unbelievable players for Claremont, and I know that the age profile of some of them is quite high, and you're right, Bert, they are looking for that clear out whenever you read anything or see anything online about it. But for me, there's just too like Henderson missing is just way too big. Like that physical being that drives them forward. I still would worry about their 10 situation. That's a big thing for me. And when you're missing so many players in terms of the likes of Addison and Marshall and stuff that can make that difference in the back line. Like, don't get me wrong, they have obviously some really good players still left there. Like, obviously Michael Lowry, I really like him and his footwork, but it's the physical stuff that he'll probably struggle with. But Ethan McRoy and James Hume, like, they're really good, young players that have a huge amount of potential. But you've got to be able to put them on the front foot, and I just think that Ulster could struggle there. I have to say though, how good was it to see Jack McGrath back from a rugby supporter's point of view? He's had a really tough time through injury, so I thought it was great to see him get off the bench last weekend. Yeah,
a few nice little touches. Had that little tip-in pass for Nick Timoney's break, and you saw some of his quality. Great to see after a horrible time where he admitted he wasn't sure if he would get back. Just to pick up on the point about 10s, we've been speaking about them a lot. You mentioned that situation worries you. You're not convinced by Billy Burns?
No, I'm not, and it's not a case of I just don't think he's good. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I just think that in big games and at this level, I just think that he struggles with the physicality side of it, the speed of it, and his game management. I do think I'm pretty, I've watched him a lot, and I've watched him when he was younger as well with Leicester, and I was really surprised that he was shooting into that Irish system because he was qualified. And I do think, and I think there's obviously Madigan's not playing. I'm not sure what the story there is, but I do think that Ulster, if they're going into the market, they need to be going into a market where there's a 10 that's going to be at that level that can match the Hendersons and McCluskey's around him.
Maybe Neil Murphy's question earlier on about Byrne to Ulster is a little bit more pertinent. What of another 10 over in Claremont, Birch? JJ Hanrahan came off the bench and scored a try against Biarritz, against a couple of other Irish guys in James Cronin and Dave O'Callaghan. How's he been getting on so far?
He's done well, to be honest. He's settling really well. His goal kicking is good, and he's getting lots of game time. I don't think they necessarily signed him to be number one. He's an important signing for him, but he wasn't signed to be the star 10 that they build a team around. But he has done, he's done excellently. He's attacking the line, and I haven't seen their team yet, but I'm sure he'd love a crack at playing in Irish province. And there's nice few Irish lads now featuring in the top 14 on a regular basis, whether you're talking about coaches or players, and it certainly adds interest in it.
What's the state of play in terms of that? Because there was a while there where you thought French clubs had been put off Irish players, maybe a little bit after Johnny Sexton's move, for example. I suppose that's a high-end international. And obviously the GIF thing is a big part of it. But as you say, those guys are really enjoying the experience. Do you expect it to see it happen more, or is it just going to be a trickle continuing?
Yeah, the thing that holds the Irish lads back, I think, the French clubs got fed up with the agents flirting with them and wasting 2 or 3 months thinking they might have them over the line, and then they stayed. So that hampered. And to be honest, a lot of French coaches said to me, "There's no point trying to sign an Irish player because they let you down at the end." Whereas, you make an offer to a South African, a Samoan, a Fijian, Kiwi, they'll either take it or they'll say no straight away. Whereas the Irish players like to visit, they want to see houses, and they're expensive as well. They're expensive compared to what you can get a South African or a Pacific Islander for. So, but what's changed now is there's coaching. There's coaches there. So Prendy, James Collin, Jeremy, Raj, who can vouch for the quality of these players, and then suddenly now you have Dave O'Callaghan, James Cronin, James Hart, JJ, Sammy Arnold. There's a prop down in Perpignan via Worcester.
Dave Conor Kerry was there for a while, wasn't he? Yeah,
Dave Ryan's in Agen. There's Noel Reid, the Shane O'Leary in Rouen. So you're getting guys, you're getting more of them there. So again, what does that do? The president and the director of sportives think, right? Yeah, they will come. So and you build up that community. So yeah, I think for guys like James Cronin, Dave O'Callaghan, etc., the guys I've just mentioned, getting to live in Biarritz, getting to play in the top 14 at the end of their careers is a brilliant opportunity for them. I saw James Cronin bought a racehorse yesterday, so obviously the contract is lucrative as well, which is important. So I wish him luck with that. But I lived there for 5 years. It's phenomenal. It's a brilliant place to be involved in rugby. So I would love to see more go, to be honest.
Was it Conor Kerry down in Perpignan for a while?
Conor Kerry's there. Is he gone?
I think he won't be gone. I'm not sure what happened there. It was a short-term thing anyway. But I'm delighted to hear that Irish players are shirking their high-maintenance reputation in French rugby, and I think it's just brilliant to see, even on a life level, just beyond rugby. It's a great place to live. Just on Ulster, Niamh, Dwayne Vermeulen, as you mentioned, is back in training or graduated, returned to training after his COVID. Do you just get him straight into the matchday squad, get him in there and get him playing?
Yeah, I think you have to. I think especially when the tough task that you're up against, obviously with all their injuries and their consistencies, like to be able to sign a player like him and then not to be able to play him between the Rugby Championship, the Autumn Series, and then he comes back with COVID, I'd say they're tearing their hair out. So as you spoke earlier on about players earning their bang for their buck, I think you've got to get him in there as quickly as you can and try and get him up to speed. Albeit, you've got to hope that there's no effects after the COVID, but if he doesn't and they've come out and said that he's training well this week, then you just got to get him in there.
No better way to announce your arrival than a game-sealing turnover at the breakdown from Dwayne Vermeulen. That'd be the way to do it. On Sunday, before Munster play, it's Connacht Stade Francais, 1 p.m. at the Sports Ground in Galway. I have a quick quiz here for you lads. Lindley McKenzie tweeted this out, a brilliant tweet. She said, it's 8 years ago today when Connacht beat Toulouse away, and 2 players from that team are still with Connacht today. One scored a vital try back in 2013. Can you think of those 2 players and even the try scorer? One of them's injured at the moment.
O'Halloran?
No, he didn't play.
Damn. Matt.
Try scorer was in...
Yeah, Matt Healy.
Matt Healy was there.
And one of the front rowers.
No, scrum half.
Oh, Marmion.
Marmion, yeah, he scored a try.
I was there. I was on CoCom. I can't. It was a great game, but I forgot. I thought Tiernan might have played, but no, it was a great occasion. Yeah, unbelievable hit and run, and it was amazing afterwards. Good party afterwards as well, back in Trevor's. Yeah.
That's for another day or another book, Birch. Listen, it's obviously a different challenge this weekend against French team at home. And Stade Francais had a big win over Rogers La Rochelle last weekend in Paris. How big a threat are they, Birch?
In terms of players, yeah, they have the quality. That was a huge win for them. In actual fact, I think potentially that win will help Connacht. I think they'll be feeling really good about themselves. They came back from a disastrous first 30 minutes and just turned it on. Lau Mape was on the bench. There's a rumour that Kramer will be back this weekend, which will be a boost to them. But I just don't. I think given their form in the top 14, I think that they'll use Europe just to refresh, recoup, mental, physical, and they'll just they'll come over to Galway and just go at half pace. And Galway, Connacht won't let them get into the game, I don't think. I'm actually down there Sunday, but I'm really looking forward to it because Stad have individuals who can do serious damage, particularly Barre and Wasevi Nakalavu, who's on fire. But I think Connacht at the moment, their all-out attack game will starve Stad of possession, and I don't think Stad really have any interest in Europe this year.
Like there's a sense of confidence, real sense of confidence this week from Connacht camp, Niamh, based around that attacking game style that Andy Friend and co and Peter Wilkins have implemented. How much are you enjoying watching their approach, and how big a threat is it to Europe?
Yeah, I love it. I loved a couple of things this week. Jared Butler came out and said that, basically their goal is to get to the knockout stages, and it's not often that we've heard Connacht come out with such confidence. So I thought that was brilliant. I thought Bert and I watched them play a couple of weeks ago in the worst conditions that sports ground love to bring, and their ability to move the ball was absolutely class. I think we speak a lot about continuity and the ability to be able to move the ball. They had players across the park that could do it. Mack Hansen, obviously everybody's talking to him about him and his ability to score tries and find the line, that kind of goal poacher-esque. But for me that night, his work rate is outstanding. He carried 15 or 16 times. His ability to do the basics so well, pick the right option all the time. And when you have him doing so well and Jack Carty in the confidence and playing the way he is, they shouldn't fear anybody, especially in Galway. But it's been brilliant. And I banged into Mossy Lawler a few weeks ago. He's obviously their backs attack coach, and I was saying to him, God, it's so, you're so good to watch. And he was like, yeah. And I was like those launch plays, I'm loving them. Like, you seem to find space and get over the gain line really, really easily. And he just literally, that smirk he gives you, and he walked away and he's like, that's the only time you know where the defence are. Just kept on walking. And I was like, such an easy thing, something we forget so much about. We concentrate on ourselves. But if you know that the defence are going to be in certain positions, because they have to be to cover the space, then you literally have such an opportunity to be able to break teams down. But I really, really am enjoying the environment and how they're playing at the moment.
Yeah, a real joy. There's real complexity there, but it's basic stuff at the very foundation of it, and it's working really well for them. You mentioned Mack Hansen there. We got a question from him on Twitter from B. Kelly. Does Mack Hansen, based on his outings to date, deserve some game time with Ireland in the Six Nations? There's still a bit of road left, but what do you reckon, Niamh?
Me, yeah, I really do. I think the back three is incredibly, it's probably at its most competitive from what I can remember. I know Bert goes back a bit further, but from what I can remember in sense of that, I think that James O obviously had a really good Autumn Nation series. I think you're looking at then the players that missed out, like the Jacob Stockdales, the Jordan Larmers. But, he's on form. He is playing so well. And I think he suits the style of Irish rugby at the moment. And his enthusiasm is just almost infectious in terms of what he's trying to do. So, I'd love to see him get a crack in there.
Have you seen a better back three in Connacht, Birch?
No, it's very exciting. And they found ways to get him onto the ball. Yeah, and they're just going to go down fighting. I mean, they came to Leinster, the RDS, and they just played, and it cost them in terms of conceding a lot of points. But I think they believe that that's how they'll get more wins. And they are very, very, very pleasing on the eye.
Are there other kind of key bits they need to hit over the next couple of weeks? Because it is a different level, and Stad may take the foot off the pedal, etc. But what are the big things that Connacht need to prove to themselves and to everyone else now as they head into Europe, Bernard?
Yeah, I think they probably want to be a little bit more efficient from their own attacking mauls, and there's just probably had a couple of opportunities to really hurt teams. Their defensive maul has got much better. some of their kicking wasn't at the required level against Leinster, but in general their kicking game is very strong. So I think that was more of a blip and testament to the pressure Leinster put on them. I think they're trucking well. I mean, we got to be realistic in our expectations of them, and they're a team made up of players from lots of different places. Some of them who have struggled in their first club to get the limelight, and it looks like all the coaching staff are making them better, and they're getting reasonable results. I think they'll be disappointed with their win-loss tally over the first block in the URC, given some of the performances they've put in. But that's just the way it is. But I think they'll continue to improve. I like Friendly's attitude. I think he's the ideal man for Connacht. He's glass always half full. And yeah, he's making the absolute most out of that team, with obviously still hopefully margin for progression.
A media favourite, Andy Friend. He's just brilliant and open and honest. And as Birch mentioned, they've got some successful stories of players coming from other provinces, Niamh. And the latest contract news was Oisin Dowling and Jack Ainger signing new deals. And I know they're not grabbing headlines everywhere, but that kind of story in the background is really encouraging for Connacht. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's just a testament to that environment. I think I spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, the fact that the way Andy Friend has them motoring together as a group, culture is so important, especially when you're kind of punching above your weight in terms of, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, I just mean in strength and depth compared to the other provinces. Connacht have a lot of players that didn't make it in other provinces, and how they're playing is just so unbelievably cool to watch. And when you have an environment that's good, everybody will go that extra mile for you. And, Jared Butler was out for a little while and they made Jack Carty captain. But when Jared Butler came back in, Andy Friend spoke to him and said, look, I think Jack's really thriving in this. And he's like, yeah, absolutely, go for it. Like, not many other squads will be able to manage that and be able to be in that mindset where they're all in together. And I think that's an unbelievable thing for that group. And I do think Leinster didn't really want to lose Jack Ainger that time, and he's getting game time there. He's getting a huge amount of minutes, and Oisin Dowling too. I think he's had a really good start too. So I just think they've got a really good group of core players there, but that they're filling with younger players, the likes of Neil Murray or that second row. And I actually just love the whole product and that package that Connacht are offering. I think it's just it's really good for the neutral. And I don't know who said it recently, I thought it was brilliant, but they're everybody's second favourite team, because they do have a really good style, and they're just, you can just buy into them quite easily. Do you know, that kind of way?
It'd be great to see it continue this weekend. So it sounds like, both of you are thinking 3 wins for the provinces and Ulster to maybe come up short.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Let's see how it works out. Some other games that are going to be brilliant this weekend. Starts with Saints against Racing on Friday night with the man you mentioned earlier on, Birch, Mike Prendergast. How have they been playing ahead of this big European opener?
It's a tricky start of season for them. I think they've got 21 or 22 players off contract. That's not ideal when you're a club like Racing. So I think they probably managed that poorly. They need to get that sorted out, that you don't have that many players in contract negotiations, and obviously if you're playing for Racing, you're a target from every club because they've got a lot of quality. So that they lost quite heavily to Bordeaux. But Bordeaux are obviously top of the table, a very good side, but they haven't been at their best. But yet, they've got some pedigree in this competition. Jackie Lawrence, Eddie, the coaches will want to win this competition. I think that could be the game of the weekend, to be honest. Racing against Saints. Saints are much improved. So it could be an absolute cracker. And I think Racing could go deep in this competition. I think regardless of their slowish start, they'll come good in the top 14. And if they get off to a bright start at the weekend against North Saints, they have international world-class players who can, well coached, who can do a job.
Interesting to see how the French side go. Bordeaux high-flying. They're playing Leicester, equally high-flying on Saturday at the same time as Leinster. Should be a cracker. Exeter, Montpellier, Saturday night. You've got Cardiff depleted from their own South Africa trip against the mighty Toulouse on Saturday at 1pm. And then you've La Rochelle are playing Glasgow at the same time as Munster on Sunday. Like, how tricky is it for them, having got so close, to go again in Europe?
Yeah, it is. It's difficult, and I think I read an article from O'Nagara last weekend where he spoke about they were on a hangover from last season, and they're still trying to work their way through that. And I think they've just got to remain patient in terms of they've had some very inconsistent results. I think last weekend they were 23 upwards against Stade Francais, I think it was, and they lost that game. So he'll be fuming with that. You know, he's a competitor, but also Europe brings out a different beast in him, and he's got to strike that balance, because obviously the top 14 is really, really important to French clubs, whereas Europe is really important to the Irish. You know what I mean? Like, so Munster have always been, Europe has been their carrot, whereas I think it's a bit different over there. They've got to try and make their own path in terms of trying to get themselves out of that funk from the end of last season and losing those games, and he's got to try and get them to navigate their way through it. And I think Cardiff being depleted is probably the teams like that he probably would have hoped to have gotten, if that makes any sense, to try and get them back on track.
Donncha Ryan's there as Ford's coach now, Byrne. Have you heard much about how he's getting on and adapting to the new career?
Yeah, apparently very good. And actually, ironically, I think it's his departure from Racing has affected Racing's set piece a little bit. He was their go-to line-out caller, and they've struggled a little bit in that space. But by all accounts, he's transferred over to coaching really well. Obviously has good French, which is a big thing when you're starting off as a coach. Understands every line out in the competition. Like, it's like getting an experienced coach, even though he's inexperienced in terms of his knowledge of what defensive systems, John O'Gibbs operates, Yannick Brew operates. He's obviously in Pro 2 this year, but all those coaches that he's coming up against, he knows their philosophies, having obviously tried to unlock them as a player coach of the Racing lineup, which he effectively was. So getting good raps and just doing it quietly and tipping away at his craft.
Good to hear. The last game of the weekend is Cast against Quins, which should be really entertaining on Sunday evening. So really a fantastic weekend. I'm going to put you both on the spot, ask you to name a winner of this competition. Niamh, I'll come to you first.
Gosh.
Toulouse, the defending champs.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not very good at this. To be fair, I haven't seen enough French rugby this season.
Yeah.
To be able to comment properly.
So you're staying on the fence. Birch,
it's hard to look past the big French teams, to be honest.
I think Leinster. I think Leinster this year.
I didn't want to say it. Toulouse are class, and you're up against that individual brilliance that they have, plus very smart collectively. Bordeaux, I don't think are ready. I think Bordeaux are real challengers to win the top 14 and will stay there. Orios has obviously done it before with Cast, and I'd imagine they'll be gearing everything towards that. But I just think Leinster have to be. You put Leinster's best 15 out, and it's basically Ireland.
Some of the best players in the world. They're well coached. They've missed a few opportunities. It's too long. Like it's too long since Bilbao Newcastle. Was it Newcastle? Yeah. No, but Bilbao, they won it. It's too long for a team of that quality. So I think this year, I think they'll be good enough to do it.
Yeah, fascinating few months and season ahead. We're going to leave it there. Thanks, Niamh.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Birch.
Bye-bye. Take it easy.
Cheers to everyone for tuning in. If you're a regular listener, please feel free to drop us a 5-star review, only 5 stars, because it helps to get the pod into more people's ears and would be much appreciated. If you're keen for more rugby coverage, including our analysis podcasts with the brilliant Owen Toolan every single Monday, then you can head over to members.the42.ie to sign up there. Owen is really fantastic, so I think it's well worthwhile, even though I am very biased, obviously. Most importantly, just enjoy the rugby over the weekend, and we'll speak to you all next Thursday. Cheers.